Imagine this. Your thoughts, your beliefs, your feelings. This is your house. But is it your home? Hi, I'm Nelson DeMello, and join me as we try to find our home beyond our borders. I don't know. I think that's fine.
Yeah, that's a good take.
Yeah, last episode, man, I was on something, bro. I went off the deep end of philosophy. I was just, going crazy. And I decided to keep it in, even though I was like stumbling through my words and talking about stuff that's just like way out there. Because I think some of y'all might actually enjoy that. So, just keeping it there, keeping it real. And yeah, since then, look, this isn't going to be heresy because I'm speculating, right? But I heard some ideas about human consciousness that really just like perked my ears, and I'm like, that's crazy. So the idea is that somewhere along the line of history, we went from speaking of being inspired by spirits and the goddess of blah blah blah. So like Athena's courage consumed me and I went out and blah blah blah, or I was consumed by Venus's lust and made love to my wife, whatever. Two, I do this. Like the autonomy thing came like at some point in time. Well, one, that makes me think of being genius. There was a time in history where people would say this person has a genius. In that same way, like this thing, this spirit, this other supernatural thing would inspire you. It would be like, it's like, I don't know if you guys watched Black Clover, and the elf looking dude, white dude, has a little elf, and like that little sprite or spirit or whatever, I don't know what the difference is, like gave him superpowers. So it was like kind of like that. So there's that. Anyways, why did I bring that up? Because so that made me think about being the bride of Christ, how God is really directing human consciousness towards like this end goal. In many ways, I don't know, it feels like Frankenstein's bride kind of deal, where he's like trying to bring this thing to life and mold its personality and character and all this stuff to be like, you're my bride, which, I mean, we get that through scripture. And I think Paul puts it as something along the lines of like beautifying the bride for the husband, like preparing the bride for the husband. So it makes me think of divine femininity in the sense that it's not, I actually don't think it's divine. It's human femininity, right? Like human consciousness is feminine. And then there's the divine Father, that we are trying to do that. It makes me think of, so this marriage, right? Ephesians 5, when Paul says like, oh man, this is the mystery, right? That two become one flesh. And I'm not talking about marriage. And you're like, wait, what? Like you were talking about marriage, for the longest time. What? You're just going to like cancel all this out? No, not really. He's saying the mystery is, how does human consciousness become one with God? How do we become one with God? That's the mystery, right? And we get hints in the later chapters of John when Jesus is talking, at the Last Supper after Judas leaves to go betray him. He's like talking to everyone, and he's like just spitting out like all this crazy, like wild information. It's John 14 to 16, I think. And he's just like going, like rambling. Like it feels like rambling because he's about to die. Like he's about to get taken by, the soldiers. He has nothing like that. Those will be like, that's his last teaching, And so he's just like rambling and he goes on and saying, I want you to be one with me the way I am one with the Father. In that we can all like be in this dance together. That's the mystery, right? So the Trinity goes to becoming the Tetrinity. We'll workshop that, okay? But it won't be a triangle, it'll be a square. a square, right? Boom. That's the mystery. And that's what Paul says is the mystery. And that makes me think of kind of the lifeline of a woman from look from a man's perspective. All right, sue me, don't sue me. But the idea, I'm imagining, right? You're raised by parents. Okay, this isn't everyone's life story. I get it. Oh my gosh, dude, don't come at me. But the stereotypical, right, life of a woman is being raised by your parents, right? So there's this ignorance about you, about us, all of us, right? Relax, okay? But there's an ignorance about you. And I think this is mirrored actually by Eden, right? Where there's innocence and perfect harmony. And then there's the fall. Like you kind of, gain that consciousness, gain that autonomy. You then like how did you say? I don't know. You go your own way a little bit. There's the fall. There's a lot of corruption. There's a lot of fighting, turmoil over like inner turmoil. Hormones don't help. All of these things. You go through your traumas. You go through heartbreak and distrust and all of these things, right? And now, like you're, I don't know, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, you're a young adult now with all of this turmoil. And then a man comes, boom, marries. Okay. Stereotypically, or let's say in a perfect world, right? Which, yes, in a perfect world, we still get heartbroken and all that. But in a perfect world, that man is the man you're going to be with forever, right? But this is what the man kind of has to go through, which is honestly kind of break you down like a Mustang kind of deal, Like he has to fight for your love, fight for your trust, fight for your consideration, fight for, hey, we're a team, hey, all this stuff. And like really break all of that down and like really, do all of that. In that process, like sure, it's way more intense in the first couple years of marriage, but then like it's still a molding. And I like, yeah, again, guy's perspective, like what might be happening on the other side, who knows? Only God knows the mysteries of what goes on in the hearts of a woman. Yeah, I don't know, man. I'm putting all this together. Maybe it doesn't sound that crazy, but I just think there's this depth. Oh my gosh, we're 10 minutes in. I didn't realize I was ranting for this long, but it's just like, yeah, maybe, after I just said it out loud, like, yo, it's not that crazy because, yeah, we are the bride. And like, that's kind of, the life of a bride. Because the next step that I would go into is like submitting and learning how to submit. And submission is always something that we're practicing, learning, growing in. I think for a human bride to a husband, but also as a Christian to God, that's always something that we're tweaking, different seasons, different things. We're still trying to like fine tune his plan for our life in terms of our understanding. Like, is this what we want? Is this what you want, God? Is this? And then, you get older in your faith and you're like, nah, hey, I know what God wants for my life, and I'm just submitted and I'm just, completely efficient in obeying, Efficient, I just mean like the input is the output, like 100%. So, all the input you put in to like all the effort you put into living and moving forward is 100% obedience, right? Like that's efficiency. So yeah, the life of a woman, I think, mirrors consciousness and how it relates to God. Speculatively. I'll say that so I don't sound like a heretic. I don't know. What I'm scared of is kind of going off the deep end and sounding like I don't have anyone by name. These fringe teachers, fringe prophets and pastors that talk about the pre-Adamic age, or talk about, I don't know, just overemphasize angels and da da da. Like, I don't want to be one of those guys. I really don't. Like, I know that these people are smart, but they're not mentored, they're not guided, and so they just go off the deep end. They just go in their own direction, and like that's how Gnosticism is born. Like, that's how it's really smart people trying to understand the implications of gospel and God and Jesus and all these things, but they just run with it. You know what I mean? Like, they don't have this self-doubt of like, yeah, I'm really smart, but I could also be very wrong. And so, yeah, that's my fear. We talked about like the character flaws and my whole thing about wanting to sound competent, and ironically, I messed that word up. But I don't want to sound like an idiot, or that I don't know what I'm talking about. And that has pushed me to like ambitiously learn the Bible and ambitiously grow in my understanding. So maybe not in a good sense. Like, what's the fine line of godly ambition, right? Like, am I doing it for his kingdom, or is it for my ego and for, all these things? On the outside, it might look the same, but on the inside, come on. And that's what we've been talking about, right? With sin. So that's one side. But at the other side, it safeguards me from sounding like a lunatic. So, yeah, that's how personalities work, So I'm blessed to have that safeguard. I don't want to sound like a lunatic. I don't want to sound dumb either. So that's a safeguard. But I also have to work on, hey, am I just being ambitious here? Or am I really enjoying myself, enjoying the presence of the Lord, enjoying being like, am I doing this for God, or am I doing with the God? And that's why I bring that up. I know you can do things for God, and that's a lovely, beautiful thing. But for ambitious people, for people that like are gung ho about getting stuff done, I think that's the question we need to ask, because we can forget, like we can leave God behind because we're so excited about moving forward, And it's like, not only do we have to go in the right direction with God, but we have to go in the right pace with God, And that's slow and frustrating sometimes. But that's what we got to do. Okay, we're 15 minutes in. I have to talk about chapters 15 and 16. Now, chapters 15, there's just three things that I really wanted to capitalize on, and so we'll do that. So I'm just hopping right in. Okay, we're just going to read verse 2 and, verse 1 as well. So the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to the people of Israel and say to them, when you come into the land you are to inhabit, which I am giving you." And then he goes on. We'll talk about the sacrifices in a second. But I just want to kind of, build this cohesive story, one facet of this cohesive story, right? We just talked about how on the last episode, the people were too scared and faithless to go into the land. God felt despised. He felt like they don't trust him. They don't have faith in him. And God was like, look, your generation is not going into the promised land. And they're like, no, wait, we don't want to die in the wilderness. Let's go for it. And God was like, I'm not with you, bro. Right after, right? All those people died. The Canaanites and all these people, they banded together. They killed them in the hill country. They either fled or died. Like the Israelites that went, it wasn't everybody, right? So that happened. And then if chapter numbers weren't a thing, this is right after, right? And so right after he says, when you come into the land which you are to inhabit, which I am giving you. That's one that informs us. Like, why didn't it work? Well, they were trying to do it by their own strength, their own merit. God is saying that I'm going to give you. I think that's super important. When we look at our life, when we precipitate, right? Precipitating means to do something before it's the time to do it. And so Obviously, it also means rain and snow and blah blah blah. That's a big word. I only know it because of Portuguese. That's how you would say it in Portuguese when you like rush something. And yeah, Latin. Am I right? Wow. Okay. So, anyways, so precipitating, doing something before it's time. We do this with dating. We do this with, I don't know, leaving the house, moving, getting a job, right? We take the first thing that's offered to us. We don't wait. We don't sit. We don't think. Which, hey, in this economy, take the first job you can get. But you know what I mean? Like there's just we make moves without really thinking about it. We make moves thinking something is shiny, and it ends up not being shiny because we don't wait, we don't sit, we don't listen to God, and we don't invite him into our journey. We don't invite him into, hey, like you're, which for me, again, this is why I think like the philosophy, like understanding who God is so important, because logically speaking, like think with me here. If God is all knowing, he knows the future, he knows the other people's intentions, he knows the other people's like their journey, their downfalls, their whatever, I'm going to trust him. I can't see 2 inches in front of me. You know what I mean? God sees everything. So I'm going to trust that this guy knows what he's talking about. So absolutely, like just from an informative, being wise, being like it's the whole thing of like going to an expert to get stuff done, you know, like, yeah, I can, I don't know, do social media, or I can make a logo or something, but why not get an expert to do it? Not that I have, all right, I'm broke, all right. But my point is, if I have the opportunity for someone who actually does this thing, like, why would I not get him to do it, or get him to teach me? Like, why would I not get that knowledge from them or that service from them? That just doesn't make sense. At a point, it just becomes prideful, you know, like, no, I'm doing it myself. For what? You know, if somebody else can do it way better, why not have them do it, you know? Yeah, it's like, so on the worship team, you know, it's like, which, I don't know, doesn't happen. Yo, people need to play instruments. It's a, you know, I think that's why music sucks, honestly, is because you only have, I'm going off. See, what am I doing right now? But people go, the only people learning instruments right now are people that are like, I want to be a musician. I want to be an artist. I want to be a producer. So I'm going to learn stuff. And it's like always serious, you know? But I think there was a time where there was like more garage bands than bands. You know what I mean? There were people just in the neighborhood. You'd have like a guy learning the drums, a guy playing the guitar, a guy who thought he was, you know, the next Aerosmith, and they would just get together and play. You know, like that was their hobby. And I think that brought about this amazing music, and yeah. Now people are just like stone cold. Like and it's all a gimmick of like social media. Like there's a route, you know, and it's like, oh, I want to be a rapper. Well, boom, boom, boom. Like this is what I have to do. The path is already laid out for me. Instead of like old school where you would just do enough rap battles where you were king, you know, or you were a poet. You would do poetry. You'd be standing over there, and people would be like, bro, you need to be doing something with that. You know what I mean? Now it's like the path has been laid out, the skill and the foundation hasn't, and you know, you get what you get. Why did I bring that up, bro? Oh, yeah. Because there might have been a time, and it might have been a world, which is not this time, where there was like 100 musicians trying out for the worship team, and you're like, no, like we have our team, and we might not have a drummer, but it's because, you know, whatever, we don't need it. Or the singer also played drums, and he couldn't do both super well, and he's just being stubborn, you know, instead of just getting a drummer or getting a singer. which now it's like you're almost forced to do that because no one wants to learn an instrument. Oh my gosh, dude. Hey, and that's I'm telling you with experience, man. I've had to play sets where I was singing, playing drums. I've had to play piano. I've learned a lot of instruments because there was a lack in our band. You know what I mean? And thank God I've always had a guitar player. Which, I mean, like, if I learned that, y'all are all screwed. No, I'm just kidding. No, but you know what I mean? Yeah, so that's my gripe as a former youth pastor is y'all kids need to learn an instrument. Like, even if it's the very basic, guitar, just learn 4 chords. You can put a capo and play every song on the planet. Just learn 4 chords. Anyways, my goodness. All right. Which I am giving to you, right? God is giving this to the people of Israel by faith. The same way God rock and rolls the same way he's been doing it the whole time. You know what I mean? He got them out of Egypt by faith. He took care. Well, let's go back. He took care of the sons of Israel by faith, right? He took care of the famine by faith. And then those people stayed in Egypt by faith, got them out of slavery by faith, took them into the wilderness by faith, took care of them in the wilderness by faith. And now here, all of a sudden, you're going to win by your might? That's crazy. Insanity. You just got to be logically congruent here and understand. Now, the other thing is, too, despite their rebellion, despite their sin, God is still faithful. So you blew it. You blew it that one girl. You blew it with the job. Which, yeah, I mean, now that I'm thinking about it, like, I'm talking, so, look, life happens, You get caught with a P test. You get caught with footage on a camera. You stole something. You washing stuff in the bathrooms you weren't supposed to and got caught, which has happened in my workplace. Which, we're tech. Well, we're not tech bros, but we're one step below tech bros. You know what I mean? I don't know. Well, I mean, maybe it makes sense. Anyways, stuff happens. You lose your job. You blew it. Will anyone ever hire me again? God says yes. Will anyone take me back? Or not take me back, but take me. God says yes. I mean, yeah, dating's a whole other thing, man. Some people are called to singleness, and hey, it's not a bad life, says the guy married. But I don't know. I really enjoyed my single time. There was a peace about it. That was my moment of silence for that, because R.I.P. All right, and then okay, so we go down, we continue on, right? He then talks about a sacrifice. Now this sacrifice is somewhat interesting. I'm gonna read one of the verses because he ends up doing this for all of the sacrifices, but then he said, verse 4 says, "Then he who brings his offering shall offer to the Lord a grain offering of a tenth of ephah of fine flour." Mixed with a quarter of hin of oil, you shall offer with the burnt offering, and for the sacrifice a quarter of a hin of wine for the drink offering for each lamb, also for each ram and each bull. Now, I don't know if you know what flour and oil make. And I don't know if if what happens when you combine that, you pair that with some wine, and you're doing this in the context of sacrificing a lamb. Cough, cough. Communion, anyone? That's crazy. I read that and I was like, oh, no way. In the Old Testament, they were going into the land, the promised land, and they were doing communion. That is something crazy. That is so cool. So, yeah, I mean, again, it's all like, it's just building up, bro. It's this, I don't, it's just this crazy thing, man. I really don't know how you don't think we live in a simulation, bro. No, I'm just kidding. No, but it's just, it is a crazy thing that, this offering, then, well, first of all, it becomes like the food of the people. Like, this is what everyone is eating, in the Roman era. Bread and wine is like super, like that's, you go to a bar and you eat that. You go wherever, and that's like a easy meal. And I say an easy meal because like no one ate meat. Like meat was for the rich. Poor people ate bread, and then wine was cleaner than water. Yeah. Anyways, so yeah, that's why everyone was like drinking wine all the time. And yes, most likely the wine didn't have as much alcohol as we do it now. Anyways, let's see. I think that's everything. Oh, no, guys. I told y'all maybe a month ago, the funniest story, okay, is right here. Verse 32. While the people of Israel were in the wilderness, they found a man gathering sticks on the Sabbath day. And those who found him gathering sticks brought him to Moses and Aaron and to all the congregation. They put him into custody because it has not been made clear what should be done to him. And the Lord said to Moses, "The man shall be put to death. All the congregation shall stone him with stones outside the camp." And all the congregation brought him outside the camp and stoned him to death with stones as the Lord commanded Moses. And then it just moves on. Guys, he was picking up sticks on the Sabbath and died. Manslaughter. Boom. Dude, that's insane to me. Like, it's funny how it was just like, oh, in passé. Like, it was just nonchalantly mentioned that a congregation committed manslaughter on a manslaughter? First degree? I don't know. Just killed a man for picking up sticks on the holy day. That's crazy. To us, a modern, American in the 21st century, that is crazy. But still, it's like, yo, what? That's crazy. I don't know. And it's, to me, it's funny how fast it was just mentioned and casually, Oh yeah, and there was a guy who picked up sticks and we killed him. No biggie. My goodness. All right, well, that's everything for 15. Let's talk about 16 real quick. And then we can get up on out of here. Now, with 16, wait, hold up. If at any point in this you said, dang, I never thought about it like that, please subscribe. What are you doing, man? I'm trying to pay my bills. Okay, anyways, let's get back to the serious stuff. All right, see it. I think I'm going to have to read everything just because there's specific verses. Like, I can tell you kind of context. I'll forget the verses that I'm supposed to like read out loud. So I'm just going to read the whole thing. I'll try to be fast. Or at least I'll get to the important parts because this is pretty long of a chapter. Yeah, so essentially what happens, right? Korah and some people, they're Levites, they get upset, right? They're upset and they then call out Moses. Let's read what they call out. So it's 250 chiefs of the congregation, well-known men chosen from the assembly, right? They represent Israel, or at least the Levites, and they're rebelling. They are literally rebelling. They're ready to get rid of Moses and Aaron. And verse 3, they assembled themselves against Moses and against Aaron and said to them, "You have gone too far, for all in the congregation are holy, every one of them, and the Lord is among them. Why then do you exalt yourselves above the assembly of the Lord?" And then Moses, I'll just keep reading. And when Moses heard it, he fell on his face and he said to Korah and his company, "In the morning the Lord will show you who is his and who is holy, and will bring him near to him. The one whom he chooses, he will bring near to him." And so he tells them to bring censers, which I had to Google, is basically a little bowl. In this case, it's going to be bronze. It can be silver, any kind of metal. I don't know if it has to be a precious metal or anything. I mean, bronze, I guess, isn't a precious metal. But it's a little bowl that you put your incense in and you burn it, right? So, it's just a little neat thingy. Yeah. This is verse 8. And Moses said to Korah, "Hear now, you sons of Levi. Is it too small of a thing for you that the God of Israel has separated you from the congregation of Israel to bring you near to himself, to do service in the tabernacle of the Lord, and to stand before the congregation to minister to them? And that he has brought you near to him and all your brothers, the sons of Levi, with you? And would you seek the priesthood also? Therefore, it is against the Lord that you and all your company have gathered together. What is Aaron that you grumble against him?" Yeah, because he then, he's telling all these people to come up. We're gonna burn incense together. We're gonna see who's who. All this stuff. I read this passage because we see. Again, people are always going for Moses's belt. You know what I mean? Like, it was Aaron and Moses, or Aaron and Miriam going for his belt. And now you have the Levites going for his belt. And in that, we're seeing that God has really separated Moses, right? So let's go out of scope entirely and kind of like bring this in. So out of all of the humans that exist, God chooses Israel. Out of all of the Israelites, God chooses the Levites. Out of all of the Levites, God chooses Aaron and Moses. And then out of the leaders, God chooses Moses, right? So it's like one person out of millions. I don't think billions yet, but out of millions that God chose to show himself face to face. And like the uniqueness of Moses has to be very understood. And I mean, it's clear, right? God is always, like, anytime there's a rebellion, God always doubles down on Moses. Like, no, this is the guy I chose. This is the man. And so there's this uniqueness about Moses. There is this special thing about Moses. There is this, like, I'm trying to like really set this picture of like, no, Moses is the favorite. Like, clearly the favorite. Everyone else, you're just along for the ride. Moses is the favorite. And so Korah is like, yo, we're all anointed and we all have the whole, like, God with us. Why are you leading us? And I think this question probably comes from the fact that they just had their judgment. Like, Korah is not going to go into the promised land ever in his lifetime. Like, he blew it in his lifetime. And so he's like, well, why do you get to decide things? And what's going on here? That's where his heart is. It's like, I don't believe God told you that we're not going to go into the promised land and blah, blah, blah. Like, it really idiotic, all I can say. Because, like, even if he took over right now, let's say in his mind, the perfect plan would be, well, if I take over and I become the Moses, well, then God's going to talk to me. And that's the fallacy, right? It goes on and saying, like, hey, I want everyone to grab their censer. We're going to offer our oil to God, and he's going to decide. He's going to do it. And he's all like, oh, shall you be the prince of us too? Like, you just tell us what to do now, and da-da-da. And so in his mind, I think Korah thinks that all of this is arbitrary. Oh, Moses is deciding all of these things. It's not God. Which actually is an interesting thing. Because we'll actually get to a section here where it actually does kind of blur that line. Like, who's really in charge here? So before I get to that, I want to talk about this verse that gives us a hint at perhaps why God tells us to like, at least in the Old Testament, why God destroys things all the way, right? I'm thinking of 1 Samuel 15, and I know often I bring that up because that is the most like clear chapter of God doing something in our heads as immoral and it being a command of the Lord, right? Like killing infant babies, women, animals, men, like charitable atheist scholars will even say, man, if it said just the men, I understand, right? It's war, they're conquering, do that. But women and children, that's crazy. And then Alex O'Connor is saying, and the animals? What did the animals have to do with anything? And I think these are genuine questions. They're not like gotcha questions. It says, thus says the Lord, like a command from the Lord, kill everything that breathes and destroy everything. I think the answer is here. I guess I'll read 23 down. So, and the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, say to the congregation, get away from the dwelling of Korah, Dathan, and Abiram. Then Moses rose and went to Dathan and Abiram, and the elders of Israel followed him. And he spoke to the congregation, saying, depart, please, from the tents of these wicked men, and touch nothing of theirs, lest ye be swept away with all of their sins. Right? So the judgment of God is going to be on these three men, because these three guys started this insurrection. And well, the 250 die from fire later, but these three were the ones that, that corralled everyone and was about it all the way, right? This last verse hints at this idea that sin is is contaminating on objects and on things. Now, if I say this out loud as if it's something new, but we've read Leviticus, right? And we know touching dead bodies makes you impure, that touching blood makes you impure. Women on their menstruation touching other things makes things impure. And if it was like an earthenware vessel, you'd have to break it. Like, it's done. You can't use that anymore, right? Other things can be washed. Earthenware vessels are broken. So we actually have this concept that sin is contagious. Like it contaminates other things. A little while ago, I said, it's not scientific. Like, I don't think we can predict. I don't think we can explain and understand the how and the what, right, of things being contaminated by sin. You're just not going to see that in a telescope. You're not going to be able to predict it, right? So it is entirely spiritual. That's not going to satisfy an atheist, I know, but that satisfies me in the sense that, because I was gnawing at this idea. I was like, maybe the meat like has memory, like the women would have turned them astray. We're gonna read this in chapter 25, I think, where the people of Midian actually make the men of Israel turn away from God to commit adultery and idolatry, all of that. And so like that happens. I'm and then maybe like the sons would grow up to hate Israel and rise up and fight. Like I'm trying to do all of this, like, thinking, right? And that's maybe just one more layer to God's command is they were contaminated with sin in a way that if we touch, like if the Israelites touched it, they would be sinful or full of sin. Yeah, sinful. And so that's one more aspect to that story. Now, I will say, not that it magically went away and we don't have to obey it anymore and this and that. God, in the New Testament, God calls all things pure, all things clean, and even so he says that about animals, right? Because there's unclean animals. You don't touch them, you don't eat them, you don't do anything. With Peter, he has a vision, and God explains to him, no, all things are clean and pure. And then even some verses like in the Gospels will say like, thus making all things pure, because again, in hindsight, like this is hindsight for the author, but in the moment they didn't catch it, right? And then you have Paul saying like, dude, if your faith, like if it's okay with your faith, you can eat food that's sacrificed to idols. That doesn't bother you. They're dead gods. They're demons. They don't have authority over you. You live your life in faith. You read that in Romans 14. And so it is done away with, this idea that unholy things can make you unholy. So yeah, it doesn't just go away. We don't just ignore that part of the Bible that is actually transformed and redeemed and reconciled in the New Testament. That is a qualitative difference between Old Testament and New Testament, right? Like that is something that us Christians believe and maybe Jews do not, right? But again, modern Jews, they try to understand it in context and and so they have their own way of arriving to the same place. Our word, the Bible, gives us that permission, right? Point being, I think that's another reason maybe why God commanded the obliteration of that. And again, like any semblance of that culture existing could have come back to bite them in the butt. I think of like hidden ruins with like god paintings, idols, and ancient scripts and stuff, and somebody coming across that and like, whoa, I've unlocked the secrets to reality. And it's like, no, dude, you literally have God. What are you looking elsewhere for? Like that just doesn't make sense. Like you have the answers right here. Like you have everything you need. Just because it's new and like alternative underground, you're like, oh no, this is it. It's like, or the mainstream is right, dude. That's okay. Like that happens sometimes. Yeah. I don't know. I used to play this game called Civ 6. I talk about it so much with my friends. They all hate me for it. It's obnoxious. But there's this idea that you can like take over other cities by having so much culture overflowing in your city that the cities around you want to be a part of your city. So like that's like in real life, what that would look like is you have this beautiful flourishing city, with a lot of like the economy is crazy. The, population is huge and whatever. And they just have a lot of influence over the surrounding cities. And, you have these little small towns or whatever. And they're like, I want energy and I want to be a part of them. Like you think if we say, hey, y'all can do that here, they would, kind of that thing. And so yeah, I imagine something like that with the people that were completely destroyed, of like, we can't have any possibility of corruption within us. This has to go. We can't have someone say, I think their lifestyle is better than ours. Like that just cannot be a possibility. So destruction. And yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, like that was the land they were taking over. So yeah, that kind of conflict just wouldn't help. But again, I'm talking about lives like this is a video game, I understand that aspect too. But I'm just like, again, I'm sorry, dude, it's going to be big picture. There's just no way around it. I can't look at the granular here. I'm just not wired that way. And two, like, I don't know if it's helpful. Like you just won't get the answers you want if you look into a microscope trying to answer big questions, Okay. So yeah, just that verse of like, get away from their tents, don't touch anything lest you be consumed with their sin, or, lest you be, contaminated by their sin, right? So that happens. Okay, verse 28 down, I was telling you how it gets blurry, right? Who's really in charge here? I don't know. So verse 28 says, and Moses said, hereby you shall know the Lord has sent me to do all these works. Right? He's giving glory to God, that it is not been on my own accord, right? He's telling them, guys, I'm not doing like everything I've been saying, all of my commands, all of these miracles. It's not me. It's not me. It's God, right? verse 29, it says, if these men die as all men die, or if they are visited by the fate of all mankind, then the Lord has not sent me. But if the Lord creates something new and the ground opens its mouth and swallows them up with all that belongs to them, and they go down alive into Sheol, then you shall know that these men have despised the Lord. And as soon as he had finished speaking all of these words, the ground under them split apart, and the earth opened its mouth and swallowed them up with the households and all the people who belonged to Korah and all their goods. So they and all that belonged to them went alive into Sheol, and the earth closed over them, and they perished from the midst of the assembly. And everyone started crying, and they're like, bro, the ground's going to swallow us up. And so they started running around for their lives, and fire came out from the Lord and consumed the 250 men offering the incense, right? So before I get into the serious stuff, I just, like, if y'all have seen like the Hunger Games, Game of Thrones, there's these scenes, right, where like there's an army on their back foot, right? I don't know. This is one of my favorite things that happens in the show is like when a small army is on their back foot, right, about to lose, and then in one like swift maneuver, they turn the tides of war. You know, this is, to me, it's like, this is crazy. Like they completely outsmarted the enemy. Like undernumbered, all of these things, completely outsmarted the enemy, and now they're completely destroyed, right? Well, yeah, I'm being a nerd here, but like the Battle of Blackwater, at the time when I think, yeah, when the North was gonna take over like High Garden, like do an attack where they would get rid of Cersei like real quick. So they take over High Garden. They were allowed to take over High Garden, and the Queen took over, not King's Landing, her land, the Lannister land. They took the castle back. My point is, low-key, this is kind of what happened here, right? You got 253 people against 2, right? Moses is like, heck no, this ain't happening. So the ground swallows up 3 of them and their families and everything they own. Boom. It closes up. And then 250 of them, like, because they're holding the incense, they're burning it. And that burning, I think, consumes them. And it consumes all 250 of them. So, like, every enemy just, in an instant, just dies somehow, right? Like, one just, and then the other one's like, ah! And everyone's, like, running around chaotically and all of this. Okay, that's crazy. The second thing that's also crazy is kind of how he like said this. I don't know. In my head, look, maybe I'm just being goofy here, but he's like, if these men die the way any man dies, like, then the Lord isn't with me. But if God opens the ground and swallows them up, and then it happens, and he's like, oh, I didn't expect that to happen. Like exactly what he said verbatim happened. And he's just like, what? All right. Which brings me to the serious point. I don't know. Like, maybe I'm just crazy thinking this, but like, God did the thing that Moses said was going to happen. So I don't know. Like, it's the chicken or the egg situation. That's kind of why this question of like who's really in charge is happening, not in a power authority sense, but like if you were an Israelite there and you didn't see you didn't physically see or hear God, and you're just seeing Moses, and Moses is giving credit to God, but he's also doing all this stuff, and you're like, Is Moses the one with the power, or he's claiming it's God, but he's doing the thing. He's doing it. And he didn't say that the Lord told him that the ground was going to, like he didn't say, thus says the Lord, you're going to, what is it? thus says the Lord, the ground is going to swallow you up. He says, if God does this and it happens, so it's like this weird thing of like, bro, are you just schizophrenic? Did you just make up God and you're the powerful one? You know what I mean? Like there's just this weird thing of like, man, you've got serious authority to just like say stuff and it happens. I'm building this up. And like the narrative is building this up. Cause we'll get to a story that is so important. It's going to be the climax. We're almost at the climax of this story. And I just need you to understand the uniqueness, Moses' authority here. Like there's a question mark of like, what's actually going on here? Like who's behind the scenes in this? Are you sure it's not just Moses like doing what he wants and he's got some real power here? So much so, right? That, let me see, boom, boom. Verse 41. But on the next day, all the congregation of the people of Israel grumbled against Moses and against Aaron, saying, you have killed the people of the Lord. You know what I mean? Like he just said, hey, I don't do anything by myself. It's all God. And if God is with me, then he's going to open up the ground and swallow these people up. God is with him. Based on that logic, God is with him. The ground opened up. They didn't die like normal people. But they don't see it that way. They see, bro, why did you tell the ground to open up? And then why did the fire consume the 250 men? They were holy people. They were good people. And then God sends a plague and starts killing a bunch of people. Moses tells Aaron, hey, go burn some incense, at the altar and this and that. The plague stops. 14,000 people die. Well, the exact number is in verse 49, 14,700, besides those who died in the affair of Korah. And Aaron returned to Moses at the entrance of the tent of meeting when the plague stopped, right? This is where I want to end. Like this, we're almost at the climax. Moses is inseparable from God. You know what I mean? Like his thoughts have become God's thoughts. His commands have become God's commands. This is like the intimacy that they have, the closeness, the oneness that they have will be unparalleled for a really long time. This is why like the Jewish people with the Jewish faith look at him with so much reverence, because you can't separate the two. You know what I mean? Until next time. Hey guys, thank you so much for going on this journey with me. If you like the content, please like, subscribe, follow, and remember, there is more to life, and that is good news. Thank you guys so much. Have a great day.